Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. I am your host, Tracy Stuckrath, and in the whole month of August, talking about wellness. And I'm so excited to have Nina Curtis, Chef Nina Curtis right there, whichever way I'm pointing. She is the director and executive chef of Plantish and Company. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? It's so good to be back with you.
Yes, we were just talking about it. It's 3 years just before COVID hit. I interviewed you for my Women's History Month. You've been having a lot of fun with your career.
Yes, I'm blessed. I'm truly blessed.
And I was excited to learn that, and as we're going to talk about, I'm going to put this little thing up here, we're going to discover how sustainable and compassionate cuisine can be delicious and impactful. And part of that comes, you're a vegan chef, plant-based chef, but I really am excited the fact that you were just at the White House cooking, as well as state dinner, and then you've just been named to the American Culinary Corps. So I want to learn about both of those things first and foremost.
Thank you again for having me. Hello, audience. I hope you're tuning in with us. We're going to have this delicious conversation. So let's take the American Culinary Corps first.
Okay.
It's a partnership with the James Beard Foundation, which I've worked with, and then the State Department. And they've collaborated to really be able to work with culinarians across the United States that they will call are exceptional with what and how they do things. And so it's really to use food. And I think it's an interesting conversation to use hospitality and food and dining experiences in a diplomatic way. So they call us diplomats. And to the White House then, since I'm a member of, and there are about 80 of us, maybe a little more, across the United States. So we're going into different areas, but the intention and the goal is that we give foreign visitors, an opportunity to see through the lens of food, through the lens of hospitality, through the lens of dining, American culture, American cuisine, and more. We say we break bread together, and we know that's a coming together, a sitting down to the table, maybe letting go or talking more about our differences or our concerns. So it really encompasses this whole idea of, at the White House, I'll go there. Uh-huh. So I was brought in as an American Culinary Corps, and I'm not sure how we were presented to First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, but I got a call and it was like, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden has chosen you and wants to invite you to come to the White House for June 22nd. And this was with the visit in honor of the Republic of India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, who is a strict vegetarian.
Okay.
So first I was like, who of my friends, I have some really great friends, supportive friends, that I first thought were pranking me. Like we're always pumping each other up. I don't know if in conversations we've talked about what would be the epitome of where you'd want to cook, or that question, who you'd like to cook for. And so that was my first thought. And then I quickly realized, no, this is serious. The social secretary, Carlos, had called me, and then things started moving really fast. So I believe that because my expertise, I'm going to say in this session, Tracy, it's plant food.
Okay.
And I'm in Northern California, and Sacramento is known as Farm to Capital, and we're talking about local and sustainable. I think in the 1970s, the whole West Coast of just this kind of California cuisine. People always ask, I don't know if you get asked, but what's American cuisine? It depends which coast you're on, I have people from North Carolina, Lumbee Indians. That's a whole different kind of look at food,
Right.
local food, sustainable, etc. So in a nutshell, how I got there, and then it just took off.
That's so amazing. And one of the things that last week, you did an interview, or you were on a panel for the Dames d'Escoffier, which I'm a member of. And I thought it was interesting that was the first plant-based state dinner ever, but the two chefs at the White House are female. And that was first time for that too, right?
Chef Chris Comaford, who was the executive chef, first female chef in the history of the White House, and Chef Susan Morrison, executive pastry chef, first female pastry executive chef in the history. So we had a lot of herstory going on. And it was the first, as they made it very clear, first plant-based menu curated and served in the history of White House state dinners.
Wow, that's amazing. And how did the guests take the food?
Yes, we had 400 guests.
Okay.
So we were out on the South Lawn. The previous state dinner had about 200. When you look at the magnitude and you look at the people, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that Thursday morning of the dinner, there were 9,000 people out front the White House to greet him.
Wow.
9,000.
Wow.
Politics, there's two sides of every story, but with regards to my experience, 9,000 people came out to show a lot of support. And so I would gather, based on the things I knew that are what we keep personal, there were a lot of vegetarians attending the dinner also. The feedback I got was very positive. People were very happy. But people are eating and they're happy, and it's a whole orchestration. It wasn't just about a dinner focal to it for all the things we discussed, but there was music, there was entertainment. So you could just feel the energy of the group was very high and positive. And I lean into that with regards to then the food was good. It can make you feel good or it can make you feel bad.
Very true. Yes. I'm going to find that because I know it's in the LinkedIn or in the Cater Source story that I have, but the pictures of the food, because it was delicious. Can you tell us what you served?
Sure. It was a 3-course menu. And I originally created 12 different items for First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, and her team to choose from. So I first had to go out and do the tasting after we went through with the chefs that I worked very closely with online, on the phone, etc. After we got through the tasting, they distilled down the 3 items, which they said was hard to choose from because they like many of the things. But that led us to the first dish was a marinated millet salad with English cucumber, silver corn, which is local and seasonal, and then cherry tomatoes. And the UN has declared 2023 Year of Millet.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah. Yes. And India and Prime Minister Narendra Modi are really behind this. If we think back, I think it was 2013, that was the year of quinoa. So if you look at how that pushed quinoa out into the public eye, I think there may be some idea that this can be the same for millet. And millet is highly eaten in India, Asia countries, and Africa. So I don't think people realize there's 10 plus millets out there, larger like couscous, sorghum, and then you get into amaranth and fonio that's eaten a lot and harvested in West Africa. The main millets that we get here are proso and pearl millet. They tend to be a little bit larger. So it was very important to have millet showcased on the menu. I did 3 different millet offerings And the main one was the salad. So it was this marinated millet. We washed it, we soaked it, we steamed it. So it was very fluffy. And then we marinated it. So it had a lot of flavor. And then it had a spicy avocado sauce on the base of the plate. It had frisee and arugula. We had edible flowers, and we did this really beautiful basil oil. So that was the starter.
Wow. And I'm looking at the picture, and I'm trying to figure out how I can post that picture up here, but I gave the link to everybody. It looks delicious.
It was so delicious. We had tasted it enough. And then it had the red and yellow, because people are like, what's then in that picture that's red and yellow? That was compressed watermelon. So the red kind of represented the red of the United States flag, and the yellow, the saffron of the Indian flag, because this whole meeting was very important for the U.S. and India to really commit and reestablish, I'll say, their bond and friendship and camaraderie. Yes. So you can see there the avocado spicy, or tangy, I should say, avocado sauce on the base, and then the millet, and then the frisee and the arugula, edible flowers, and then the watermelon. And we because the watermelon is full of water and it would run, and you've got to be conscious of serving 400 people and having to imagine 400 of these salads ready to go, but I need them to hold.
And that was something that I thought interesting last week that you said too. And when meeting planners are planning events for 400, for 7,000, you have to think about, chefs really have to take that into consideration.
Yes. Last year, I just had a meeting yesterday. I was one of 5 lead chefs for what we have here locally. It's an annual, the Tower Bridge Dinner. And this year is its 10th year. And we construct a dining experience on this yellow bridge in Sacramento, and 850 guests attend.
Oh,
so
wow.
We built a commissary. There's no close kitchen nearby, I'll say that. So we have to really think about, when you're curating menus, and I like to say this to people, because it's not just about, oh, why didn't you do this, or why didn't you make that? If you have something kept warm too long, it's going to lose its moisture. It's not going to look as presentable. You'll hear people say, oh, the meat was so tough. It's not, you could have got the best ingredients, but what starts to happen when heat is involved? So we do have to think of those things. So that was the salad. And then the main dish was a saffron risotto that we also then had this stuffed portobello mushroom with seasonal vegetables roasted, and baby carrots, and non-dairy. So it's not just about vegan. There are a lot of people that are lactose intolerant. So we were able to still use non-dairy cheese that you can see melted really well. It was just very flavorful. We had, those were greens that when we did the tasting, we were able to take them from the actual garden at the White House. But for 400, we just didn't have that volume to pull from. And then roasted baby carrots, very tender, very flavorful. But again, I knew this dish would hold well and present.
I like the risotto was really held together there. And then the carrots, that's a placement of putting those carrots there. They're not just slopped onto that plate.
No, 400 plus and a little over. It's not being more average for the guests. Yes, we took pictures. Everybody knew where things needed to go. But we had, just for the first 2, we had a team of about 30 in the kitchen with us. We every day started building up. More people were coming into the kitchen, and servers. We just really were a tight team. We were organized. And when you look at the plate, there's placement. Like we'll say, okay, this is going at 12 o'clock. This is going at 3 o'clock. This is going at 6 o'clock. This is going at 9 o'clock. So we all know exactly how it needs to go, and then how it needs to be placed in front of the guests. So we're all seeing the same thing.
Right.
It's an orchestra. You're putting on a orchestration. You want a symphony of sorts. So we really have to be tight and on our game.
And that's a really big conversation between the front of the house and the back of the house.
Huge. So we had meetings with everyone. And everyone got to see what it looked like. So communication is key, because we need the people in the front of the house to immediately be telling us if something's going on in the front of the house that we can't see, and vice versa. And then, of course, we had people that had special dietary requirements.
I was just going to ask you that. Yeah. So how did you?
There weren't a lot because we had already taken away the main 9 allergen type foods. So already I even considered tree nuts and those kind of things that we eliminated. And we had the dessert, which I'll get into, was the cardamom rose infused strawberry shortcake, which is a dessert I grew up on as a kid. My mom made it a lot in the summer. So we had these beautiful sweet strawberries. We made the cardamom, the biscuit, the short biscuit, and then cardamom in that. Very subtle, but when you bit into it, you could recognize almost like this subtle aroma fragrance, right? So you chase that. What is that? And then we marinated the strawberries in the rose syrup. So you can also see that we weaved in, while Dr. Jill Biden wanted to present the best of American cuisine, we also weaved in like a thread to build this tapestry with Indian spices and infusion of flavors and elements, but very light and subtle. But it grabs, that's a part to me that's very satiating and like this, oh my gosh, what is this taste? I know this taste. I didn't expect it here. You get people very inquisitive about what they're eating. We made coconut whipped cream. We have candied lemon zest. And then we took pistachios and sprinkled them. There's edible flowers. And then on the other side, it's a sugar pool. And Chef Susan is really master at this. She made the red, white, and blue flag and the yellow.
It's edible?
White, yes, and green. Everything on the plate's edible. So she made sugar pools. And then right here in the middle, it's like connected, showing the bond and the connection between India and the United States. So all these subtle messages weave throughout the dinner that if you don't know, you don't know, but it still sent a message. Mm-hmm. Now people are beginning to know the meaning behind the intention and the madness. Imagine she and her team had to make 1,000 of these each.
Wow.
Because they're going to break their sugar. And we had the heat, although it rained, so the temperature was really nice. But you have to think of all these things, the humidity, very different in DC than what, I might be experiencing in Sacramento. So we have to think of all of these things, almost like an engineer, this culinary engineer, what's going to hold, what's going to present as our vision. And this was First Lady Dr. Jill Biden's vision that we're pushing out. So not a lot of pressure. Not a lot of pressure.
Not at all. Not at all. It's not like hosting the XYZ convention in the Des Moines Convention Center. Right. Yeah.
The word back and the letter back was very pleased with the execution and the deliciousness. You don't sacrifice deliciousness and taste and texture for anything. I don't. Anything in what I do. My dad's a chef and he'd always say, it better be delicious. You can have all the nutrient density. You can call it healthy. I think we have to normalize healthy and deliciousness going together because so often they don't. So often someone's going to go, oh, if it that sounds healthy. What does that mean? And usually it means, oh, that's going to be boring. But that's not the case. And there's no need for it unless someone is really on a strict dietary, program because there's a real health issue. And so we have to be very conscious of sugar and salt and all the rest that I think our society is just becoming aware of more every day.
I think so too. And when you see the studies out there, then more and more people are looking to know where their food is coming from. They are focusing on sustainability and looking at what they want to buy food-wise in that way. And this is just because my dad was talking about prices of eggs before I came up here because my mom came in. So can it be more economical for the plant? Is it more economical to eat plantish?
I love that. It's like the protein question. People always say, oh, it's so expensive to eat healthy. It can be if you're shopping for products that are in boxes and the marketing dollars are what you're paying for and the advertisement. To eat a plantish, plant-based, vegan diet, I didn't know about you, but the last time I priced grains and beans, especially if I'm buying in bulk or I go to Whole Foods, and that can be a little bit more expensive, or Sprouts or Trader Joe's, what's local to me, it's very economical. We look across globally when we talk about food diplomacy, and these whole foods, whole plant-based food are what are really economical and can feed. What did our armies, what has military been fed for the most part? But we get into, if I'm talking truffles, I know I'm going to spend a little bit more. It takes a lot more to get it, but it's and thank you for asking, because I'm really an advocate of whole plant-based foods. Right? It's like someone can be on a junk food diet, a classical diet, as I'll speak of it. Someone can be saying, I'm vegan and eating Oreos or these accidentally vegan foods. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for whole plant-based foods. We're looking for eating a rainbow. You saw all the colors on the plate and the combination. I don't know, or if we missed a color in the rainbow, and if we added a color to the rainbow. So those are the things. To answer your question, it's very economical to eat a whole plant-based food diet. And like you said, with eggs and milk and those things that really skyrocketed as we saw, you can do things and still get the nutrient density and not be putting out that money. But at the end of the day, there's always those that are going to take capitalistic advantage of what we're dealing with as a society. So they can, I saw things that I would normally get that's like a treat that went up $3. And I just said, no, I won't have that. Or I'll go home. I know how to make it. So just make it, Nina.
But that takes time, Nina. And they don't have, a lot of people don't have your skills.
Skills, one thing, yes, but we can all learn. There's, YouTube, university. But time is the thing. Time is the thing. And in the kitchen, no matter who you are, because when I leave the commercial kitchen or the professional kitchen, I come home and I'm no longer an executive chef. I'm Nina cooking her meal. So time for me is as, if not more, important. So I'll do batch cooking. I'll plan my menu out. Even if I had a family, I would plan these things out so things are more accessible to me. Look at our society, how we're ordering out, and we're already spending a lot more money in Uber Eats and others. We've got to be aware of that. And I am a professional chef. I want you to come. I want to feed you, but I also advocate for teaching others how to make, let's say, restaurant-like food, since that's so sexy, in the comfort of your own home. And I see that we're dancing. We've been doing this dance since 2020, really strong, right? But I do understand that people are out working, or even if you work from home, you're working. Right. And then you've got to turn off and take care of the family. So I really work with people to show them how to make it easy, and then you could have add-ons. So I've already cooked my millet, let's say, since it's year of the millet, and I can pull that out, or my quinoa, or my rice, whatever you're really into. And then I can accent with my vegetables that I don't want to batch cook, etc. Just organization. We say mise en place. That's everything. We spend most of our time in the kitchen getting organized. We do. So time to serve, and it's like fire. We can fire. If we didn't do that, we'd be running into each other in the back, and nothing would get out. And so I think that's what we have to do in our own kitchens also, because I come in and I mise everything in my own kitchen for myself. I don't I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, because that's what cuts our time down. And then you can sit down, if that's what you do, with your family and really enjoy the meal.
And I like the idea of the batch cooking. And there was an Instagram account years ago that it was a woman who was teaching moms to do that for the week. And Saturday or Sunday, cooking what you're going to use, bits and pieces of your menus for the whole week. Because then it helps you streamline those busy Monday nights when you've got the kids going here and there and everywhere.
I did that in college. I had roommates, happened to be two guys, and I would spend all day Sunday, put the music on. They'd be watching football. I'd make lasagna, all these things we'd love, and then freeze it and label it and everything because I was in school. I was working 2 jobs, that college student thing. And I remember coming home one day and they both were sitting around the lasagna, had heated it and just put some pot holders on the table, not even the dining room table, and just were going in at it. And in my head, I just wanted to explode because that was supposed to give us like 8 servings. And they were devouring it while they watched a game. Then I really gave them the lecture. Very organized and put the menu on the front of the refrigerator. Do not touch this until Wednesday at 7.
Oh my goodness, that's hysterical.
Backfires.
Did they ever talk to you again?
Yeah, I laugh about it. I laugh about it, but in that moment, because I knew it would take us. I knew how we ate, and they were like, "It's so good." I was like,
"That's a good thing." And was that vegan back then?
Back then, it wasn't, but it was already less meat. I think I was doing like turkey, so it was more vegetables than not. But it had cheese in it because back then in college, I've been a plant-based vegan for over 2 decades.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a while ago. They're hoping I forget it altogether.
No, that's not good. That's never going to leave your brain. Okay, so what does sustainable and compassionate cuisine in the title of this, what does that mean in looking at plant-based and how can he just produce a dinner for 400? How can we emulate that at convention centers and hotels across the country?
I think we all have an idea of sustainable. Me working in a kitchen that was building standard, it was like low to no waste. It was really looking at as a chef that was feeding 1,400 people. In this case example, how do we look at our menu and then the ingredients for those items and how do we repurpose things so we can be a bit more sustainable in our dollars, in our food production, where we're getting our food from and how we can repurpose our food. For example, I just did a presentation this weekend in Kalamazoo, and it was a advanced culinary medicine and nutrition summit. And I took hearts of palm and made ceviche because I was also presenting the blue zones and the longest lived people. While they weren't vegan, they were heavily plant-based. And then you have these 5 different zones. So they have their local foods. And so I used this inspiration of this hearts of palm ceviche from Nicoya, Costa Rica, but I made 3 different dishes in front of my audience. I used it like a cocktail with crackers, and then I took an avocado half and put a scoop of it and put some tortilla chips, and then I used it like a scoop on a bed of lettuce that came from their 5-acre farm that was around the corner and made a salad. So I was trying to impress upon the audience that was chefs, RDs, dietitians, and doctors to really think about the menu you're curating and how the produce and the ingredients, no matter how you're cooking, can be used so you're not having all these different items, as we know, cost more. You could lose more if you don't use it in time. And then in the kitchen where we use a lot of jalapenos, you got to buy a case. So where we'd be almost halfway through, but I knew we were going to lose them if we didn't do something, we would half them, take the seeds out, and then dehydrate them. And then pulverize that into a spice that people just went crazy for. I was like, the next step will be to sell it as its own jalapeno spice, because you rarely see that on the shelf, right? But so that's what I mean by sustainable when we're looking at cuisine and we're looking at produce that doesn't have as long of a shelf life.
Right.
And I think in 2020, we saw a lot of food service entities shrinking their menu, right? So sustainable, what's hot, what's not, really keep the things that sell and move. That's sustainability to me, along with all the other ways we know sustainability works, from working with your local farmers to how far is food being transported, how is it being composted, and all else. So there's that backwards. the other thing was about compassion. We can talk about a plant-based or vegan diet, but I did an event a couple of months ago, and the producers of the event, it was at a museum. They wanted to bring me in as the vegan chef, and they were expecting 900 people. And I was like, guys, be careful. Don't try to decide the percentage of vegans that are going to be attending, because there are people out there that my offering was gluten-free. My offering was dairy-free. My offering was even nut-free. And I said, there are going to be people that pretty much know when they see the word vegan or in plant-based that it may better fit the dietary realm that they're in or the dietary space. And sure enough, that's what happened. My offering sold out the fastest.
Wow.
Yes. And then there were some vegans that came later, and there wasn't anything available for them.
Wow.
To me, means let's remove some of the labels. Yes, I'm an advocate for animal compassion for the animals and care and guardian and welfare of animals. I'm compassionate and an advocate for the planet we live on. I've said it before. I don't necessarily want to go to Mars. I want to stay here. You guys do your thing. I'm compassionate for the people that actually do the work to get food on our plate that we, in general, may not want to have to do. And I'll leave people to think about that. So compassionate cuisine to me is outside and is larger than just plant-based and vegan. It is looking at compassion for, I think we saw through 2020, people just showed maybe not their best side to food service workers and hospitality workers. And compassion for the professional side is, just as my museum example, being considerate of the people. Don't narrow people down and label them. Be aware that people right now know that certain things, the way they're prepared for food service, may mean I can eat that because it's dairy-free. I can eat that because it's egg-free. I can eat that because if it's said it's gluten-free. So we need to widen our scope of compassion in general with the people that we're feeding. And gone are the days of the chef that's pissed off because I've walked in the restaurant and said, can you take this and this out? Yes, we're artists and we want to express that artistry. And I would rather and respect if I see something, it's like a supper club and they're like, we will not be able to accommodate you if you're gluten intolerant or a vegan, whatever. I'm just like, okay, cool. I know not to go there. I'm not going to fight about you have to do something. But today, I think most people expect that they should be able to go into, whether it's a meeting, eating at a meeting, or going to the White House, or going to the cafe down the street from you, or going somewhere for breakfast, a diner, that there be more options. Considerate. Compassionate cuisine is considerate of a larger audience in my scope of work.
I love that. And I've got a comment here that says, I love the concept of compassionate food. So simple yet so profound. I agree with you, Rajari. I'm sorry for mutilating me.
And if you say vegan cuisine, which I say, and I have no problem with it, or I say compassionate cuisine, that's an icebreaker. That's a conversation. That's a hook. What people lean in. What do you mean by compassion? If anything, we need to be a more compassionate humanity and human with each other of our differences. My mother and father are not vegan, but they're very compassionate about when I come into town, oh, where can we take the vegan? And they know that I'm going to find things and my plate's going to look better. And then everyone's looking at it like, how did you get that? I didn't see that on the menu. I said, well, I looked at the menu and looked at the ingredients that I already know they have. So I'm not asking them to run out the back door and get something they don't have. I'm very compassionate in my request of my dietary needs also. So it works two ways.
And you said that last week on the DOMS meeting, and I thought that was just so interesting that because individuals with food allergies or celiac, they'll look at the menu online, see if they can eat there. But with your talent and what you've got, you went to a non-vegan restaurant and said, "Oh, can you make me this because I know you've got this?" And and you speak their speak as well. So I think that helps. Yeah,
I have a very good friend that's not vegan, but she has a list of can't have. And then she'll start asking the food server, where are you preparing the meal? Your grill clean. And I went to purchase an item just the other day. I was over in Sac, and it's a vegan cold cut.
Okay.
And the person working said, we don't have any. And I started getting into a dialogue with them. And I was like, but I called the manufacturer. I called the store before I came. And they said, you did have it. And he said, then he went into, we have one meat slicer. And so we have to have that meat slicer cleaned and sanitized before we put the meat on it so that we can slice the non-meat. And my next question was, so you have it in bulk, it's just not been cut? And he said, yes. And I said, and there's no way to stop in the middle of your day in your production and prepare that meat slicer so you could slice it for me? And he said, yes. As a professional, I said, I got you. I understand. Can you just give me a pound of X and a pound of Y? And I'll slice it myself once I get home.
That's,
and
yeah.
Did that because I have the capability of doing that. Not all guests or those that have spent their gas money now, because they've been told, yes, we have it. So there was a gap break in communication. Because also the meat that he was getting ready, one of them to cut for me, had an expiration date the next day because they had opened it for someone. So you see where there's a problem from the manufacturer to the in-between person to the customer trying to just spend money. This was my third time in the store being told they had it, but I listened more intently. And I looked over and said, do you have it? And it was a yes. And then I changed my whole way of approaching him and leaning into him because I could do what I needed to do. I do have it. I have sliced it, and I'm very happy. But that is not the case for the end user that's just trying to get a product. So the manufacturer there has to be more compassionate with what's happening with the person that's selling it or serving it or whatever else. So that's what I mean about compassion all the way through, up and down the chain.
That's a really interesting way to approach it, because I was also talking to a friend, another chef out of Louisville, I need to say that correctly, and about doing kitchen audits, right? And it's looking at it, she's like, you and I need to go together because I'm going to see one thing and you're going to see something else. And a chef being in their kitchen altogether, it's got blinders on, not for the fact of they've got blinders on, but because they're in there all the time, they don't necessarily see the opportunities.
Right. No, it has to be a collective conversation of all parties involved to provide the best for the end user. And that's what the thing can break.
And I also think, too, the best for that worker as well.
Yes.
Because that compassion you mentioned a few minutes ago.
Whoever the end user is to the manufacturer's end user is the store, the account.
Right.
The vendor end user is the customer trying to get in. Most often it's the customer end user, restaurant, food service, store that gets the short end of the deal. But the vendor to the manufacturer, this isn't working for us. Nobody's ordering it. We can't cut it and then lose it. Everybody loses at the end of the day.
Right. It reminds me of an event years ago that I worked on, and my client bought an event registration system. And they designed it the way they wanted to sell their tickets, but they didn't think about the reporting or the actual ticketing at the end. And we were having to put Band-Aids on and reconfigure everything at the last minute in the middle of the event selling. And I think the same thing with a manufacturer, right? You've got to think about that end user doing that.
Yeah. Compassion again comes back to letting go of our egos.
Right.
And not, someone will say, oh, you're right. I'm not trying to be right. I'm trying to be efficient, or I'm trying to be effective. It's not about right. I'm working with you. We're collaborating together. So let's both win. Let everybody win.
Exactly. It's definitely that. Now, and one of the things I think I ask you in advance too is I've just recently done an audit, and I've collected 100 menus from hotels and convention centers around the country that I'm going to audit too. But it comes down to that labeling thing too, but it makes it really hard for a meeting planner to order food when the menu's just put out there, right? And there's no labeling of it. And
Right.
how can we make that efficiency be more compassionate from both sides?
Anytime I'm doing a catering, there's always labeling and ingredients on a tent card printed out with specifications of, as the caterer, I want to know what are the guest requirements for the dinner at the White House. We knew what the dietary requirements were so we can meet those needs seamlessly with no attitude and make it as good, if not better, as all rest. So I think that is really important. That, again, I think it's the communication from those that are the decision makers that sign the checks, all the way down to the frontliners, which we are, that we get the brunt of it, or we get, and being able to listen and not take it personally. If you have 350 or so menus and you have to look at kitchen design and how we have to decide if we can do this and we want to do this and we want to say, we serve everyone, have it your way. Like when I worked at Burger King in high school or McDonald's, we were timed how fast we got it out. I've been able to take all of this from high school, time to lean, time to clean, and bring it up to all these years of the fanciest courses I've cooked, and those elements still distilled down to matter. Right? So to answer your question as best I can from my seat, it's, oh, well, I already do that. But I would have very specific questions I'd be asking you as the meeting planner of the needs of the guests, and then what in reality I can do, or what I might need to go outside and get. And that may or may not cost on your end, but at least we can agree that this is enough of the audience that we need to provide for. And then I've got to have my team trained. And again, that usually comes from leadership. How is the buck being passed? How is the carrot being passed? I have to be the one that is initiating this and excited about it. So my team is also, and I've been in hotels and everything else. I've had great leaders and I've had not such great leaders. That for me has all been a benefit to define and come into my own of leadership.
That's awesome. Because you do learn from your mistakes. You learn from things you don't like to do. Yeah, totally. Okay, so based on the culinary core, based on your 20 years of, even before that, working at Burger King to McDonald's,
my dad in the kitchen at 8 years old, he was a catering chef. Listen, if I had worked with my dad, and I love him if he listens to this because I usually send him these type of things, but I just want to say, he was a no, this is how it's done. Cut those onions. Don't look up until you're done. Don't put your tears in my onions. Learn to cut an onion right. I can go out into the best and worst situations. And I was just told the other day, I have this way of making everybody feel good because I have a sense of humor. I don't take things too seriously. And I work to empower everyone to know that they are needed on this particular project. I don't use the term job. I usually say assignment or project because people are like, oh, complacent with jobs today. But assignment and projects, and you've been chosen. I'll never forget hearing that call where they said, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden has chosen you. I sat up straight in my own. I was like, what are you talking about? Who's watching me? Keep compassion going. Be lighthearted. My grandmother used to always say, don't come in my kitchen and cook if you're not cooking with love.
Like that? Mm-hmm.
So I carry all of these things. I have my better days and my not, but I have my reminders that help me to, and I go throughout my day, I'm human, having attitude adjustments. Because if I just stub my toe, that hurt. And I want to scream. And if you're trying to talk to me in that moment that I want to scream, it may seem like I'm coming at you. So I'm quick to be able to adjust my temperature and tone and feelings throughout the day.
And I think that's everybody. That's a good lesson to learn for everybody and for those listening, getting that feedback from you, having that interaction with you. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really important. Okay, so the next question I want to ask you is, with all of this, the future of food, and I posted an article yesterday or the day before, is that at let me read it right, at the Conference of Mayors.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw this. 1,400 mayors signed embraced the resolution to emulate New York City's model of plant-based initiatives.
Yes.
So with that in mind, is that the future of where we're going, or do you have other concepts around that?
That's one of the futures of where we're going. I was on a panel in the end of 2022, and it was from the conference that the White House held in June of 2022. And then they were working with the Independent Restaurant Coalition and the Plant-Based Association, the James and the American Culinary Corps. And we had this whole webinar to really get restaurants, cafes, eateries across the United States to have more plant-based offerings. But remember, in my world, plant-based or vegan also means compassion. That also means, I'm taking care of potentially the gluten intolerant. I'm taking care of the dairy intolerant. I'm taking care of the egg intolerant, the seafood, the nuts, etc. So they're already working on it. So I think it's coming out now. Governor Newsom here in California last year passed with unified schools that every unified school in California will have a plant-based offering on the menu.
Okay.
And then we have to look at the dollar amount that unified schools are given to serve even a lunch. That's another story. But $700 million going towards that. So it definitely is a coming of. And I think it's exciting. I think you and I and others will find our way and have to meet with people that are a little maybe disgruntled with this thought of more. We right now, as an industry of hospitality and culinary and eateries, restaurants are still struggling trying to keep their doors open.
I heard of 2 that just shut down
daily. Yeah. I just read a list, and it's like in my alerts that come up to keep me going. So I know, because I'll go home to LA and a restaurant has closed, and it's just my regular thing to just go straight to the restaurant. And now I've had a couple of times where it has shuttered. And so now I'm looking before I get in there, I either driving a car or taking Uber. So this is something, yes, that I think is getting more attention. I think with 2023 being the year of millets, they're really looking for millet to do what quinoa did. Millet's very different. Millet has a lot more opportunities. That's very exciting. So technology, how is AI going to affect us? How is food delivery going to affect us? How is the new model? And I don't have the answer. I'm watching and looking and identifying even how I work. How is this new model of what we have known as eating at a meeting, going into a restaurant to eat? How is this beginning to look? I did an event a month ago, and I didn't do a charcuterie table and I expressed to her, whether a guest says it or not, they're watching, and this will be a more equitable, more sanitary and fun way, because we took her label of a new book she was launching and put that on the cup. So we were able to advertise and get more impressions out. So a lot of things are coming, but food is always going to lead the way. We need to feed hungry people. We need to give people shelter, and everyone should be able to live in a warm environment and sleep in a safe environment. Food sustains us, and food is entertainment, and food does a lot of things. It comforts us when we're in distress or depressed, but there are a lot of other things that come into play. Food is just the core, like it was at the White House. I am standing as a citizen diplomat. So while I'm very excited about all these things, again, the word compassion is huge for me in 2020. As before or until we have compassion for each other, we're going to always have these issues of hunger and kids not getting nutrient density either at school or home. And they're our future.
Yeah, they are. They are. And just those kids that just won that lawsuit in Montana for climate change, right? They're like,
yes.
Said that to my niece, and she's like, "Oh my God, I didn't see this. This is awesome." But it is. They're the ones leading the charge.
And sustainability and compassionate cuisine, that all goes into climate change, the environment, all the things we're talking about. Look at Maui. All those things that we're talking about, we have to really, whatever you want to call it, people realize there are changes happening. And if we don't get control of it, we're all going to be at some point experiencing, it's really hot. I came back from Kalamazoo, which rained and it's humid and it's on the East Coast. And I was like, oh, we're so arid and dry in Sacramento. And I fly in and it's humid.
Oh, wow.
And it's 90 degrees at midnight when I get in. And I'm like, what is going on? And the next day was very humid and we had rain. So we have to really start paying attention to and identifying however we can identify with it and do our own due diligence, not just read an article, but go, okay, do people fact check anymore? I find so many unfact checked things in things I read. So I have a time of my day, usually later in the day, to collect all the things like we're talking about and really comb through and fact check before I share out information just because it was written in print or now.
Right. Yep. That's a really good point. Very good point. Okay. So one last question, because we could talk for hours on this.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I want to ask you, if you were a farm animal, what would you want to tell people?
Oh, I love this question. And I am going to be a cow because I love cows. I love cows. They're such sentient beings. And my next would be a pig that's been proven to be smarter than dogs. And I think my Akitas were the smartest of them all. I, as a cow, would be saying to you, I love hugs. I love laying down with you. I love running and chasing a ball. Cows do? Yes. Have you seen cows run? They are like big kids, but you just have to get out of the way because they just like go, but they don't hop like goats. But when you've been on a farm, when you've worked around animals, not for their meat source, but for just them as pets, as we've chosen to domesticate cats and dogs. And I had a parrot, I've had birds, I've had lizards, I've had hamsters growing up. I embody that feeling of when I see cows and they just love rubs and they love hugs. And I really look for our future that people come to realize, again, if you had to do what it takes to get these flesh items on your plate, the question would be, would you? Would you? Mm-hmm. And I believe a lot of us wouldn't. And these industries make it very hard to see between their steel metal walls. But for me, I leave you with just that compassion of this idea of this cow frolicking in your backyard. And if you throw him a ball, it's got to be big enough that he can really get, or she can get a hold of it. I guess it would be a bull if it was he. But they're fun, they're loving, they're sentient beings, they have feelings, they feel pain. And yeah, as a cow, I would be saying, just be more considerate of me. And if you have a lot of land, think of bring me on your land and just letting me be one of your animals that love on you.
Oh, I love that.
I think what people really saw, we love the whale, love the shark. And you see these shows on National Geographic or others that show just, it's like the number of sharks that get killed is outrageous in a year compared to the shark that's in the ocean minding its own business. And it sees another moving. It doesn't know it's human. It sees it's moving and that looks like food. Right. So passion for me is wide. It's tall. It's large. And so I'm working on myself to be more compassionate every day.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I really like that thought process of it as meeting planners, right? Let's be compassionate about how we're designing our menus, right? We need to be compassionate about our budget for sure, but we also need to be compassionate about what we're serving and who we're serving. So I love that.
Bottom line and budget, it's just a muscle we need to use because the more we know about the opportunities, whether it's economy of scales or when to buy something or even talking to our vendors, we can all negotiate price, but we also need to support each other and think about those out there in the field in the hot sun that are working to deliver. So when blueberries don't come in and blueberries are prevalent on my menu, I always have a second option that will be as delicious. That's compassionate.
Compassion. Okay, that's a great way to end this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I always have fun with you. I hope everyone found this discussion to continue food for thought and also get into conversations with people, because that's the only way we're going to make a change. We can all watch Eating at a Meeting and love and agree, or leave with, I'm going to think about that. I don't know if I 100% agree, but we are the ones that are already paying attention, and we need to share that in our space and scope of people. And I do this with my own family, and they're all, I just didn't see it that way. I didn't think of it that way. Of course, you didn't have to.
Right.
I've chosen to.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, everyone. Same time, same bat channel, same bat time next Wednesday here at 12 o'clock. Until then, stay safe and eat well. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.